Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a really exciting build. They're all exciting, but a pair of Skymaster 1 to 7.75 scale F4s is what we're doing. So stay tuned and we'll dive into the build of these two F4s. All right, guys, little background story on these aircraft, or I guess mine. This is mine. And this is going to kind of lead into what we start off this video with. So I bought this from a friend of mine last year in 2022 during the summer. And this is an older kit. I don't know how old it is, but I do know it's an older kit. Part in part because it has the old airlines. Now all the Skymaster kits, they've had the really colorful airlines for quite a few years now. This is before that. This kit also does not have any Aerex in it or any foam material. It's all straight fiberglass and carbon fiber. So there's very different construction methods between these two aircraft. So that is going to be quite exciting. So to give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about, here is my canopy hatch, here is the new canopy hatch. Very different weights on these two items. Mine is all straight fiberglass and cloth and everything. This one, fiberglass outer, foam inner. So it's going to be quite interesting to do the weights of these aircraft and all the associated parts and see what the differences are between the old construction and new construction, and then also how these planes finish as well too. So this new one here, the one we did the unboxing for, the video is in the description down below. This is one that was just made and shipped to us. This is going to be set up as a twin aircraft. So we've got two turbines back there. We're powering this one with Zykoi 120s. And it's an interesting setup too because you've got 4 tanks that go in this area. Now the CG of the airplane is about here. So those tanks are just in front of the CG point, which is nice. Now on mine, it's a single setup. So the turbine itself sits in this area, but you've got a saddle tank and a saddle tank, and then you've got a front tank here. Now again, the CG point is going to be about there, so your saddles are right over the CG, but that front tank is quite far in front of the CG. So it's an interesting setup difference between these two aircraft, and I'm really excited to actually see how these things end up overall. So first thing we need to do is we need to weigh all the parts. So what we're going to do when we weigh the parts, just like the other videos that we've done in the past, we're going to keep things fairly simple when we're weighing things. Like these both have the nose gear installed. We're just going to keep that nose gear in there. We've taken out the pipes and all that type of stuff. So we'll do that. We're going to measure the wings as well too. The wings are pretty straightforward because both of them have the exact same gear installed. The only difference between the wings is the construction methods, which again, it's going to be interesting to see the weights. So let's start off with the weights of all these items. We'll call the new plane, plane number 1, and we'll call my plane, or the older plane, plane number 2. All right, so we've made a chart here. Part goes on the left-hand side. Plane number 1 weight is here. Plane number 2 weight is there. Now we're going to do everything in grams. To figure out pounds, you divide whatever the grams is by 454. So if the right wing is 454 grams, you divide that by 454, and that equals pounds. All right, so plane number 1, right wing, 1435 grams, and left wing 1445 grams. This is already an interesting part because I am really curious to see what the wing difference is. Now, we do have a little bit of differences with these wings. So the old wings, the way the setup goes is you've got the one rod going all the way through the fuselage, and then you've got each of these rods is glued into the wing, and then there's a clamp that holds this in. On the new wings, there's the front rod going all the way through, the back rod going all the way through, so it's a little bit of a different setup. So we do have slightly different. So this does have more weight just because of the rod. So if we're like maybe 50 to 75 grams heavier, the wing is pretty much the same, but we've added the weight of the rod. Okay, plane number 2, right wing. Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. So we're 1545. So we're 90 grams heavier on the right wing. Plane number 2, left wing, 1525. So the right wing, we are 90 grams heavier on the old wing, and the left wing, we are 80 grams heavier. Now, let's weigh the wing tubes and add those in, because that overall is going to give us the difference in weight on just our wings. All right, now these Skymaster tubes are pretty hefty items. So they are, they're chunky, they're solid carbon. So plane number 1, the wing tubes, we've got 322 grams. And plane number 2, the old plane, we've got 155 grams. So we'll add those up and see what our differences are. All right, guys, exactly what I was suspecting. So overall, when you add these two up, plane number 1 with everything is 3202, plane number 2 is 3225. So essentially, these two setups are identical. It really doesn't make a difference. Now, both of the planes have carbon laid in there. Some of the differences are going to be, like on this one, there's a lot of Arex and foam material. When you look at the flap area here, you'll see like there's a foam rib all the way across. You can see the foam construction. And then on the old plane, there's balsa for that rib, and a bunch of balsa added into the construction as well. So better, worse, who knows? Obviously the new one is better, but it's just different. And it's curious to see the differences. All right, next thing, we might as well weigh the pipes, because those are a very obvious difference. I think the twin is actually going to be lighter. So the pipes on plane number 1, the twin is 434 grams. Now, my pipe already has a little bit of the work done, so it's got the bell mouth mounted and the mounting hardware, so not truly a fair comparison, but it'll be interesting to see. So mine on the bipipe is 517 grams. So actually they're probably really close if you take the bell mouth off and that mounting hardware. This mounting hardware is steel, so it's fairly hefty. So actually better than I thought. All right, guys, next thing we're going to check is the rudder. So we've got rudder number 1, 275 grams. And rudder number 2, 254 grams. Interesting, so we're lighter. All right, now this one is interesting because I can physically feel a difference between these two. So we've got our main hatches here. So hatch number 1 is 130 grams, and it's a very significant difference. Number 2, yeah, 233 grams. So almost a quarter pound heavier on that hatch. All right, so we've got our elevator here. This one's a little bit tricky to measure. So elevator number 1, 358 grams. I wrote that in the wrong spot. 358. Okay, and elevator number 2, 368. So 10 grams difference, not much there. All right, we'll weigh our canopies. So canopy number 1 is 155 grams. Canopy number 2, 172 grams. All right, guys, we are getting into the fuselage, and this is where things I think are going to get interesting. So I need to reset the scale, 0. Okay, so front fuselage, plane number 1, 1135. Okay, fuselage number 2, front fuselage, 1300 even. Oh, that's significant. That's 165 grams difference on the fuselage pieces. That's very surprising. Okay, so fuselage weights here were a little bit different right now. We've got the both plates installed in the back end here, the cover, the exhaust cone, so there are some differences. So what I'll do is I'll dig out those plates and all the parts that are already mounted to this fuselage, and we'll make sure we include those in the measurements between the two. Okay, so we've got our exhaust cones. Now, these exhaust cones don't have the hardware to fit them on yet, so that is a bit of a difference, but that's okay. So the parts here are 243. Now we'll check out the fuselage. Okay, we've also got that hatch cover, which is 32 grams. This is not going to be overly easy to measure. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we are 2670 plus the other hatch cover. So that's 2702. So we've got 2702 plus 243, so we are at 2945 for fuselage number 1, or plane number 1. All right, guys, so I weighed the fuselage of plane number 2. Didn't have it on camera because my camera was overheating, and the cockpits I weighed as well too. So the fuselage overall is significantly heavier. That is a huge difference, unfortunately for me. So total for plane number 1 is 9,054 grams. Plane number 2 is 10,314 grams. So we've got 19.94 pounds. And plane number 2, we've got 22.718. So very significant differences. 2 3/4 pounds heavier on my old plane. Ouch. All right, here's my predictions for these planes. These are very, I think, overzealous predictions, but we'll see. I'm hoping, initially I was hoping my plane would come in about 34, 35 pounds. My goal right now is 36 to 37 pounds. I hope we can get that. We'll see. Plane number 1, David's new F4, 35, 36. Again, these are just predictions, but that is officially what I think or hope will come in at. Okay, so let's review some of the equipment going in these planes. This is my section first here. So some of the basic equipment we've got jetty, of course. So the aircraft will be powered by my DS-24. We've got kind of just a random amount of stuff here to take a look at. So we've got a 900, 2 Rec 7s, an M-speed sensor. Going to put that in for sure. Don't know if I'm going to put the 900 in there. We've got a central box, which is going to be doing the main hub of everything. And then, of course, a Cortex as well, too. Now, ideally, if I was buying new products for this plane, a central box 310 is really the best option. That's what David's going to be putting in his. We'll go over that in a minute. But so I had a 200 series, 210 or whatever it is in stock, 220. So that's what I'm going to be using. Now, there's a great workaround with any of the central boxes, and this works with any system actually, or any of the good systems. So this is a little bus hub, the SE6, and you can get lots of different plugins. So this one has a power plug-in dedicated and then the signal plug-in. So what this does is you plug this into one of the EX ports, EX bus ports, EXT maybe. I have to check the manual. Anyways, check the manual. You plug this in and you get additional channels. So the central box has like 14 channels on the 200 series. This would add 5 more channels plus another telemetry input on it. So great system. Obviously you wouldn't want to use a bunch of servos through this, so this would be something like the air valves and all that type of stuff. So good option for me for this scenario, and also I'll save a little bit of weight by going with the 200 series. Okay, so we're going to be using a mixture of Zycoi valves and Jetronic valves, but we've got a few Zycoi valves to choose from here. We've got a Zycoi sequencer, and we've got a V-speed compressor as well too. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be installing the V-speed compressor in there. Now, one of the kind of big changes for me on this plane is we are going to be installing KST servos. Now, initially I was planning on installing MKS 9930 servos, but when I did the testing on the other KST servo, the smaller helicopter servo, during the build of the Hawk, which is over there, that's why I'm pointing over there, KST reached out to me and they asked me if there's any other servos that I want to try out, and I said I'd love to try out the brushless, like high-powered servos, and fortunately I've got 7 of these going in the aircraft now. So here's the specifications for them right there. So they're brushless, 25 tooth spline, and great looking servo. When I got these servos, I actually put them all on the cycler, the Jetty Box cycler, and they ran through 1,500 cycles each. They were just warm to the touch. So really excited to try these servos out in this aircraft. Thanks KST for sending me these servos. I do definitely appreciate it, and it's pretty cool to be able to try new products like this. Awesome. Okay, so a couple of other little things here. Tubing. I ordered brand new tubing for the entire aircraft. The stock Skymaster tubing on these old kits. Now this is the old tubing from Skymaster, which was absolutely garbage. It's like super stiff material. Never use this stuff if you get a kit. All the new ones are different tubing, and it's awesome. So anyways, we have to replace all the tubing on mine. Anyways, that's kind of my layout on what I'll be installing. All right, and while we're talking about equipment, I think it's a great time to introduce today's video sponsor. Today's video has been sponsored by Solder Stick. Now, if you haven't watched my testing video, I'll link it down below as well. Solder Stick, I totally thought these things were bogus, and that's why when I got them, I was actually really excited to try them. If you guys didn't watch the test video, I encourage you to watch it, because these things actually work, and they work amazing. So yes, you know, I wouldn't use them in some scenarios, like if I'm putting servo wire together. I would just probably use a connector, right? I've never soldered servo wires, but I'll give you a great example. When I was doing the L39 over there, if you haven't watched the build videos, it shows it in there. So when you install the Unilight sets, and we'll see this in this aircraft, when you install the Unilight light, you got to cut the end off, usually extend it, and then you have to put the Unilight end back on. Well, I used these in the L39, and they were so easy, not having to dive in there with the soldering iron inside the fuselage. I actually did all of them with a lighter, and so that's something I've been playing around with as well too, guys, is using a lighter on these things, and it works awesome. I'll give you some tips on that. Okay, so when I use the lighter on these, one of the things I found out is you want to do the ends first. So get the ends nice and sealed, and then I start focusing the heat on the center where the solder is. And I'll do all that with the blue flame of the lighter, not the yellow flame. Worked perfectly. That's how I did all of those Unilite connectors in that L39. Works awesome. So definitely check out SolderStick's website. There's actually a discount code as well too. All this information is down below. But if you guys place your order and use the discount code RC20, you'll get 20% off your SolderStick order, which is awesome. This is the 500-piece kit and contains a perfect amount of various connectors. I don't really see myself using the yellow ones. That's why there's only 40 pieces of that. But the white ones you definitely use, the red ones you use, the blue ones I use, but mostly it's the white and the red, which there's tons of those things. So anyways, guys, SolderStick, these things are awesome. Thank you, SolderStick, for sponsoring the channel and for supplying these really cool products. We do have some 50-piece solder stick kits coming, and those will be giveaways as well too in future videos, so keep an eye out for that. All right, my aircraft, the Ordnance, I actually got this from a friend. He flies the Black Bunny one, so that's why it's all painted black. And initially I was like, I gotta paint it all, but I think I'm gonna keep it black. It looks great, and it's also gonna look great on the underside of this aircraft. I'm not really a huge scale guy, so it doesn't really matter to me if those are painted gray or not. So I'm gonna keep them black. I think it's gonna be a really cool look on the underside. So that's my aircraft. So let's take a look at the new aircraft and all the equipment that's going in there. So we've got a pair of Zykoy 120 engines that are going in this aircraft, the new one. Now I did some weights yesterday when I was comparing the two. My Swiwin engine, the 240 with all the equipment, I think weighs 4.4 pounds. These pair of 120s with all the running equipment weighs about 5.5 pounds. So we're basically a pound heavier with the 120s. So that's going to make a difference as well. The tanks is, I mean, we're deviating a little bit from equipment too, but the tank system, there's 4 tanks in there, so that actually adds a substantial amount of weight too. So with David's layout here, we've got a V-speed compressor that's going in the aircraft, all the Zykoy valves and everything, the sequencer and stuff, that's all pretty straightforward. We also, in this package right here, we've got a full Unilite kit, including afterburner lights. So that's going to be one of the big differences between our aircraft. We've got a twin versus a single. We've got new versus old. We've got full lighting kit versus mine's going to have no lighting kit in it. Maybe in the future I might add one, but my goal was to as light as possible. Not that that adds a ton of weight, but it all adds up. So that's going to be neat to see in an aircraft too, because there's actually a lot of lights in that in this F4. Okay, so we've got a Cortex here that's going in there. We've got all of our electronics here. So this is kind of what I was going to initially put in my aircraft. So we've got MKS 9930s, an HV 1220 for the steering, center box 310. This is really what needs to be in the aircraft ideally, but again, I'm not buying new, but we're going to be putting a 310 in David's. And we've got some more servos underneath there. And we've got 2 Rec 7s, which have the 40 centimeter dipole antenna, the long one. We've got an R3 for the on-off switch from the radio. One thing I just noticed that we're missing is the M-speed sensor. Anyways, M-speed sensor, I think we're going to be wanting to put one of those in this aircraft. Both of the aircraft are going to be getting one of these guys. These are from Matrix. He actually machines all these things. This is the extendable nose wheel. So you can hook an airline up to it, and when you go to take off, you can fully extend this leg, and gives the aircraft a positive angle of attack. And then when you come in for a landing, you can have less air or no air in there, and there's a spring for the bottom portion of the travel. So pretty cool equipment going in both of these aircraft. All right, so both aircraft are getting a chute on the rear. Now, I don't have one with me right now. It's actually in that box right there. So when I got my kit, the fellow I bought it from already had a detail for scale chute mechanism and everything. So detail for scale is no longer in business. So we're going to send that one off to Joe, my 3D printing buddy. Thank you, Joe. And he's going to make up a copy of that one for the second plane. So we do have a chute going in these aircraft as well. All right, guys, well, we've got things fairly organized here now. So we've got the new plane stuff over there on those 3 tables. Old plane, my plane is on these 3 tables here. So we're working on the wings first. We've got the fuselage there and fuselage there. Now, I will apologize in advance. This build is going to be quite sporadic and quite all over the place. Part of the reason for that is we've got 2 completely different generations of kits. We're still waiting on some parts. Never built an F4 before, and we've got a lot of modifications to these kits to do as well too. So there is stuff that we've got to deal with, and you know, I kind of like to have videos organized where it's like, okay, this video we're doing the wings, this video we're doing this, but it's just going to have to go in succession. The manual is very, very old from Skymaster, so the manual is no good at all. And that's it. So anyways, one of the first things we're going to start on is the wings. The wings, because we've got lots to do with the wings. So we'll take a quick overview here of the differences. Now, the wing itself, the top skin of the wing, both of them are carbon, and give you a different view right there. This is all like foam material on this base, okay? And then on the structure of the wing, you've got a mixture of thin plywood and a layer of the foam material, and you can see there a very, very different structure. When you compare it to the old process, so you've got a plywood piece all the way across here, but the pieces are quite a bit thinner. And then if you look inside, again, things change. So you got balsa here, but the big difference is this is all plywood laminated with fiberglass, plywood. So just different, better or worse. Well, obviously this wing's heavier. So now the things we need to change on these wings, there's quite a few. So number one, we need to add structure underneath the gear mounts, because these gear mounts are very thin, and guys are talking about for a long time now how these will break away in a hard landing situation. So we're going to be building that up with material. On mine, we've got to change all the the tubings, and then we've also got to change the inner gear door setup. So this reportedly opens up in flight because the geometry is not very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a bell crank system here, and that's going to have to make sure we rework all of this stuff. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but something we can definitely do. The tip light over there, it looks from the base of the wing or the root of the wing, it looks like we've got a clear channel all the way through to the tip, I hope, when it comes to this bend, that it's still open. So we'll have to see how that works out. So those are the big changes we have to make on these wings. Step number one is we're going to be pulling the gear out of all the wings to get access to this area, and then we have to service the gear as well. All right, while we're working through this stuff, one of the first things I like to do is burn in all the servos. So we're running these MKS servos for 990 cycles, and we'll do each of those. These are the completed ones. Those are the ones to do. So it's nice because you just put them on and leave them in the background to do their thing. So all the KST servos that I have already been done, so that's why we're doing these MKS ones. All right, so pretty straightforward to undo those screws. It's nice that this door is on the spring, which is easy to access. And then our back or outboard portion of the gear was raised up with 2 washers. So just a good point to notice. So anyways, that's what it looks like when the gear comes out. They've taped the lines down and everything, so looks like that is the best path for the lines. I guess we could route them through here, but then we'd have to do a big hole through our support. So anyways, this is the area that we want to build up. But we're going to take all the gear out of all the wings first here. So it's nice that all the airlines are routed just through this area. Makes dealing with this stuff a heck of a lot easier. So anyways, that is the first gear. Let's pull the other ones out and see if there's any difference. All right, so we've got the gear out of all of the wings. Now what we need to do is come up with our wood pieces that are going to be glued in underneath the gear mounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some aircraft ply, take some measurements, and just figure out how many pieces we need to go across here. Obviously there's lots of different ways to do this, but I think I just want to build up underneath each of those gear mounts on both sides and glue it all in place and let it cure. So that is our next thing we're doing. All right guys, we've glued in all of our reinforcements underneath the main landing gear mounts and worked out good. Basically did the same model on both wings. The new wings had a little bit of a different spacing compared to the old wings, but really, really close. So anyways, that's done. We need to let that cure now for quite a few hours. So we'll probably get back to that stuff or touching those gear mounts tomorrow. But we can still work on the new geometry for the gear doors while we're waiting for that to cure. Now I used West Systems 610 for this. The main reason I used it is I know we would need a lot of material, which we did end up using quite a bit of material for that, and the big tube is just nice to deal with the nice nozzle and everything. So that's why we used it, and don't have a problem using this stuff. Actually, it's really, really nice to use. So now what we're going to move on to is starting to work on the new geometry for the inner gear door. No politics allowed.
That's priorities. You're filming, so shut up and film.
All right, so we are working on the, I guess you call it a cantilever system. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, so I have a piece of plywood in there and cut out a arm. The long side of the arm that's going to actuate the door right now is at 25 millimeters, hole to hole. The one that mounts to the air cylinder is 15. Now you can't use the stock air cylinders because the stroke is way too long and we don't have enough room. So we've got some other Model Aviation products made in Canada cylinders. These are, I think, a 1-inch stroke, and these are what we're going to try using to begin with. So initially we're just kind of mocking things up and seeing if it's actually going to work. So we won't glue any of this in place until we have confirmed that everything's going to work. So I think the next step is we need to pull these, the existing air cylinder and tubing out, and then we'll add our arms on and see how things work out. All right guys, so we've got all of our stuff figured out here. I'll show you all the geometries and stuff that we've come up with, but we're using Model Aviation products small pistons. So these are the 1-inch pistons with their mounts. This is substantially less stroke than the stock piston. And then what I did was I took 2 of the Skymaster lock nuts that come on their arms and I installed those. And this prevents the arm from going in all the way, and this actually gives us the right amount of movement for our geometry setup. So this is our actuator for this system. And then here's our actual linkage system that we've used. So this is Dubro arms number 2133, and we've sanded those down a little bit. I'll give you the center to center measurements. And then also we've got our movement arm here as well too. So I'll give you all those measurements now. And all these measurements, so what I'm going to do is repeat these measurements on 3 more setups like this. So we've got everything that's repeatable. So our arm itself, center to center, is 34, I guess we'll call it 34 millimeters, 34, 35, somewhere in that range. Our actuating arm is 25, and this one should be 15. 25 and 18 is what we've gone with. So what we're going to do is make 3 more of these guys, and I think we're good to get this set up. It was actually a lot less work than I thought, but it's really a guessing game at first. So I'm going to get these mocked up, set up, and we'll get one of these installed. All right, so there's kind of our final geometry on everything. The only change really is the amount of those little lock nuts that we put on the shaft here. So we tried 4, didn't work out well, so we ended up with 3, and that seems like it's the right amount. If we take another one off, what happens is that amount of lock nut is showing of the shaft, which means that the shaft is always, or the air cylinder is always going to be pulling against this door, and we don't want that. So anyways, that seems like it worked out perfect. Also added a bit of a cutout on the bottom of the piece of wood right there, and that just makes sure that the bolt head can pass freely. So if this is the bottom of that block, we're basically taking like one layer of that ply out, just so there's a bit of an indent there so the bolt head can pass by. So now that we have that done, we're going to make up 4 more. Now it is possible to cycle this stuff with everything installed. So I'm holding here, holding and pushing here, and Ward, who's here helping me, is closing the door. Not super scientific, but it definitely works. So anyways, let's make 4 more of these. And it was time consuming, but it works. All right, so we are gluing in the whole door system here. Now this was quite a process. It basically took almost all day to do. It's a lot, but anyways, it's underway. So we've glued these in. When we were doing the mock-ups, we were holding these in place, and then we're putting some Sharpie marks along the bottom so we knew exactly where those up and down supports that the arm mounts to go. So all we did was put some Hysol in there. We got the door straight up and down, as you can see, in the open position. Glued the block first, and then glued the backside of the air cylinder. So we're letting those sit, and hopefully we did all of our measurements and everything properly. So the old plane is done. Now we are going to glue the new plane air system in place. All right, and we've got 1 gear serviced and 1 gear not serviced. So these are the old gear, of course. We're not painting these ones, we're just gonna leave them silver, and we are changing the lines though, so that's one of the key things that I've already talked about. We're going with kind of the normal Skymaster line layout, so we're using black for brakes, and then we're using orange for up, or red is what it would normally be, and blue for gear down. So these are all done now. It's important to make sure you Loctite everything, and that also includes all of your wheel bolts down here. We lubricated the brakes. We did all the fittings on the actual gear itself, and the struts. Also, what I like to do, doesn't matter what gear it is, whether it's old or new, but I will cycle the gear while it's out of the plane, and I will suck in some silicone lube through the fittings. So in this case, as an example, this is in the gear up position. We cycle that gear down by hand, and we hold the silicone lubricant bottle over top of this nipple and just suck in a couple drops. And what that does is it floats around the cylinder, keeps the O-rings conditioned, and also keeps the O-rings nice and sealed. So that is what we do to the gear. We're also next going to do this gear, and this is just those tedious tasks that you can get done while you're waiting for epoxy to cure. All right guys, and our geometry on the doors worked out absolutely perfect. Try and show you there. Oh, gotta stay out of my light. So you can see there, we are, probably hard for you to see, but the stoppers on the shaft that we installed worked out just perfect. Very happy with this geometry modification. It was definitely a good idea. Took an entire day to get it done, but it's going to make these doors work a lot better and stay closed. If you look at the geometry here, when this is closed, it's pulling straight down on the door. I had a couple guys in the shop yesterday wondering why we're making this change. Well, if you think about it, the geometry, when that original cylinder is going like this, when it's closed, it's not even pulling down, it's pulling more of that angle right there versus straight down. So very, very little holding power on that door. This totally changes it. So we're good there. We've also got the gear support blocks that are all cured and good to go. So the West Systems epoxy worked great for that. and we just gonna have to drill these back out again because we're now drilling into the wood about halfway. So but that is a great change. I don't think we're gonna put the gear back in yet until we get all the servos and stuff run and the lights run, because we wanna make sure that we have wide open access to everything. All right, guys, and that is the end of video number 1 for the twin and single F4 build series. Don't forget to check out Solder Stick website and stuff down below. Very cool items. I know lots of people are very hesitant and question the ability of those things to work, but I love them now. They save a ton of time and they're super simple when you're doing certain wiring applications. So if you guys have any questions, list them down below. You can reach out to me by email. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll continue on in the next video with the F4 builds.